I hope everybody can understand me. My name is Thomas. I'm from Alumat company. I would like to thank everybody here in the audience on this fair and forum for their attention. And I also would like to welcome all of our audience that is logged in and listening in via live stream. Henning Hild, unfortunately, he had to have a surgery short notice, so I'm replacing him today. He prepared the presentation, so I will do my best rather, to make this a proper presentation, but just so that you know about the circumstances. So first of all, who are we at Alumat? We've been dealing now for quite some time with age-appropriate living, and we adjusted our products accordingly. And I think we also launched some of the age appropriate solutions when it comes to living. Already 1918, our family owned company was founded by Harry Frey. I don't think that they're married or related or whatever to Oliver Frey. And our founder, Harry Frey, unfortunately passed away last year, but he was 94 years old, so a very fulfilled and long life. And ultimately, the decision for focusing on accessibility was also sparked by the fact that he was suffering from a leg injury because he tripped over such a hazardous threshold, if you will, 25 years ago. And this very painful experience back then inspired him to develop an alternative to these unnecessarily and often very high thresholds. The daughter, Rago Frey, has been taking over business, so it's in the business, family-owned business in second generation. As already said, we have been on the market with age-appropriate living products for 25 years and are experts. We are talking about special transitions for exterior and interior doors, but the ceilings that we have for interior doors have been on the market for even 40 years, but with a more simplified technology. And when it comes to exterior areas, accessibility in new construction and also existing and listing building for tilting and rotating doors, lift and slide doors, this is something we've been working on for the past 25 years. Alumat pioneered by barrier-free or accessible construction back in the days when it was still a fringe phenomenon. We thought back then, okay, how can we solve all these issues related to accessibility? So again, we were kind of a niche company. We were not taking that seriously, and we were only asked when there was really no other option. So we were the last resort solution. So this means now that we're spearheading the entire development when it comes to accessibility, namely absolute accessibility in terms of threshold. We have a certain tightness against driving rain. We have a prevention against break-in and entry. We are soundproof. We are smoke tight, airtight. So we are always spearheading when it comes to certain requirements by standard harmonization and the like. In 2011, September 2011, we then had the Dean Standard 18040 about barrier-free or accessible building. And this standard says age-appropriate and barrier-free living is visibly gaining in importance and social acceptance. Barrier-free construction is accompanied by an increase in safety and comfort for all of us. Doors play a central role in this process because it is through doors that we gain access to buildings, our homes, and the rooms they contain. So the normative and legal requirements for barrier-free doors are regulated in DIN 1840. So the normative requirements when it comes to DIN can be found, for example, in section 4.3.3 for doors, and there it says under the general stipulations, so doors need to be clearly visible, easy to open and to close, and also easy to pass through. And for that, lower thresholds are inadmissible. If they are necessary for technical reasons, they must not be higher than 2 centimeters. So this means this is not an everything goes for 2 centimeter threshold, but this is just an exception. It is truly only an exception, and there might be the necessity for an expert report, for an expert investigation to actually determine, right, we cannot achieve a zero threshold, so here we have to deal with a maximum of 20 millimeters. So once again, this is not an anything goes. This must remain an exception. Another point from DIN 18040 Part 2 when it comes to normative requirements are living doors or doors in living buildings. So the doors within an apartment need to be easy to operate, easy to pass through, and be sufficiently large for the use with walking aids or wheelchairs. They're easy to operate and to pass through if the opening and closing of the door can be achieved with very little force. The pushing fittings for for mobility impaired people, for blind people, or people having visual impairment. So, for example, by bended or U-shaped handles, vertical handles for manually operated sliding doors. What is rather not to be used are rotary knobs or knobs in general or inserted handles. And we also have the seating outdoors. So if the apartment has seating outdoors, for example, a terrace, a loggia, or a balcony, this one needs to be accessible for everyone. So this means no threshold when accessing the balcony, for example. This is the ultimate conclusion from that. This is a very important part. So it's not the main path of accessibility, but also all the accesses toward the balconies, because I mean, the person paid for them, so they should be able or must be able to use them. So accessible doors and windows are always subject to proof of the mandated properties. So in addition to the requirement for structural accessibility, so you mean this means a special free door construction, and they are also subject to the product standard for windows and exterior doors. And here products are evaluated according to their properties, which must be proven by an independent testing institute. So their properties must prove themselves, first of all, that they're actually there, and then that they work by an independent testing institute. And this on the basis of tables from building standards and stated in the CE mark. Legally, only the proof for the mandated properties is necessary. Um, those are in Germany. So resistance to driving rain, the heat residential buildings, according to the GED or ENED, the heat transfer coefficient, as I said, radiation, properties of glass, water tightness, air permeability, and resistance to wind load. However, the last one is not necessarily required. Other properties such as sound isolation or burglary resistance may also just be determined as a requirement throughout the tendering process. So when it comes to the proof of the mandated property, the the products need to be delivered with a certain CE label. So CE labeling or certification is only happening once the product is completed. So not the individual components, not the fitting, not the sealing, or the glass that is installed, but the ultimate final product, which on the ground, on the construction site, is installed into the overall construction body. So the overall window element or entrance door element. And with this certificate and the scope of performance and delivery, um, this is all included in the CE label. So this means any pre-products, other components, accessories. So this means everything must be supplied that has been tested in the test certificate. So, for example, something is listed in the test certificate, then the corresponding fittings need to be delivered. The glass, the seals, additional components such as static profiles, if this has been specified by the CE label, fans, gutters, and the like. So, accessible solutions, there are only two systems that are available here on the market. They differ slightly in their construction. We have the lowerable or liftable door seal. So they can ensure zero threshold, and they can at the same time ensure thermal sound or smoke protection, as well as driving rain tightness. On the left-hand side, you can see the lowerable version. So this means a building element that is inserted into the door wing, and when the door is closed via a spring and push mechanism or pressure mechanism, it is pushed downward. So the door is opened, the ceiling drives upward, the door is locked, the ceiling via mechanical forces is pushed downward. Or on the right hand side, you have the liftable door seal. So those are magnetic sealing, which you work in principle. So you have a magnet in the floor rail, and it has a corresponding counterpart, which you can see on the right hand side. So if they are meeting in a parallel line, then they're drawn towards each other by magnetic forces, and this is how we seal off this air gap. With both versions, the combination of a high performance drainage system appropriate to the installation situation is necessary and should at least be investigated, because the sealing in and of itself in the long run will not guarantee success. So you always need to check for potential sources of water which ultimately are damaging, and how you can make sure that you have a watertight solution in general. So how do we solve this with our solution? So in our floor rail, oh, I'm sorry, I pushed the wrong button. Here you can see it. So you can see the working of the magnetic double sealing. So in the floor construction on the left-hand side, you have two magnetic strips installed, or magnetic profiles, which is why it's called magnetic double sealing. They are just loosely placed into the floor rail. So these magnets are activated when the door is closed. So the corresponding counterparts can be better seen on the right-hand side. So with every door at the bottom, you have magnetic strips that work as the counterpart to the magnet installed in the floor array. And when the door is closed, as I already said, if both magnetic strips are in a parallel position, they are pulled towards each other upward. And this is how we seal off this system. So when we're opening the doors, relatively easy, the magnetic strips are moving back into the original position, and this once again gives us the accessible and barrier-free transition. So level transition in construction can be realized via different solutions. For example, FMATPH. So this is um, the German abbreviation for magnetic solution for the outer door, and PH stands for passive house certification. We will talk about that in a minute. So the system is compatible with all wood aluminum system, with all plastic profiles available on the market, with all aluminum door systems, and also with most of the steel door manufacturers and profiles. Sometimes we have the difficulty with a certain construction depth, so that we can actually insert the magnetic strip in the wing, because steel construction keep it very lean, but usually in what is commercially available on the market, it our solution works. with our threshold construction, we can achieve a sealability or tightness across all 4 levels. So on the outer side of the wing, we have inserted our magnetic double sealing. We have at the very outer side a Frey seal, and then we have an additional sealing for airtightness. And then we have our system-bound load-bearing thermal insulation, which is all the way to the unfinished floor. So with this threshold system, we have a certain driving range tightness, air permeability, and also we have 20 years of warranty. Our manufacturer, our supplier are giving for the magnetic sealing 20 years of warranty for the magnetic traction. So what are the individual parts? How is this realized? So as I already said, for the driving rain and for the tightness against driving rain, we have the first construction characteristic on the outer side, which is the weather strip composed of several individual parts. I have the fundamental profile or ground profile, which is attached to the outer side of the door. Then we have the big seal, breathing seal, sorry, and then we have the cover for the blind, for clamping screws and the like. So this gives us the first hurdle of the rainwater. So if the door is exposed to weather conditions, the water runs down the door, then it is transported outwardly via the weather strip. If you have a certain wind pressure, air pressure, then it can happen that in the folding area, the water is pushed via the wind pressure towards the inside. So this is where it then reaches the double magnet. So the magnets of themselves, they're just a sealed surface. If they pull together, nothing can get through. So this is why we constructed it in such a way that the insertion of the rainwater via a very small gap in this magnetic channel could be an option, but because of a certain drainage level, it is prevented. And this drainage level is within the threshold profile. So it is once again directed outward to a chamber where water is collected, and then you have a hose connection where it is ultimately directed to the exterior. Where exactly that is, we don't care. What's most important is that the water leaves the system. But of course, there are some construction requirements. So things where you have ground contact, soil contact, you need to treat that differently than roof surfaces or balconies, of course. So you always have to assess on an individual basis, where do you have weather exposure, where can this water be directed to. So what does this mean? This zero threshold solution that we offer, that has been on the market for quite some time, has proven itself, especially or stood the test of time when it comes to water tightness. This water tightness is not simply a claim that we make, it is also certified by independent certification institutes. And here we have an example. So we have a 2-wing door in connection with a DK plastic profile. We achieve best results here. So all the way to the class B900, E900, we achieved certification, obtained certification. So we have different profile systems for wood, for plastic, for aluminum, for inner openings, for outer openings. So you have various certification documents that are all available on the website in a fourth pages leaflet. So there you get all the information, what is relevant. So it's not only about water tightness against driving rain, but all the other things that I will mention in a minute when it comes to sound, when it comes to protection against B&E, when it comes to other criteria. So now we're moving on to the heat transfer coefficient, always an issue when it comes to accessible doors. There you always have this problematic case um, of condensation water collection. So here you have a summary or a synopsis of the guidelines for planning and executing the installation of windows and front doors for new buildings and renovation of the Gütegemeinschaft Fensterfassaden und Haustüren e.V. And it says, due to the design requirements, walkable exterior doors and window sills, as well as barrier-free sill constructions, represent a thermotechnical weak point with an increased risk of condensation. Adjacent sensitive floor coverings on the room side or on the interior side can be affected by temporary condensation. So what does this mean? The contractor or the customer or client must be informed uh, prior to execution, and there is an obligation to inform and clarify. So with our threshold system, things are a little bit different. We in our F&E, again, luckily are one step ahead, so we did our homework here. So we have a passive house component, so certified in that sense. So we have the first passive house certified zero threshold on the market worldwide. So this means that our threshold-free floor profile consisting of a plastic aluminum composite with magnetic double seal and a load-bearing thermal insulation is realized as a threshold substructure. So the zero thresholds are compatible with all passive house compatible door and window profiles made of wood, aluminum, PVC, or and the like. I already said that. So under normal conditions, we have no risk of condensation and therefore no risk of mold when it comes to construction. And in terms of planning, of course, this represents a huge asset because this prevents large scale insulation and the like. So what about certificates? This is a very important market. Something that we encounter more and more is not only accessibility, but there are more requirements now that we need to live up to. So, for example, noise protection. And in terms of that, this means for our solution, MFAT for new buildings, but also regulation profiles called MFZ with our standard solution. Once again, we have a two magnetic door cell and we have a noise protection class of 43 decibel for joint sound reduction. And we can also, with a tripod magnet, achieve 46 decibel. Prevention of PNE, especially when you have two wing doors with wood and aluminum and plastics. We fulfilled this requirement with a Sigenia fitting of the class RC2. It might seem a little bit far-fetched, but it is actually doable. Another important point, everything that is barrier-free always um, needs to be particularly considered when it comes to sealing, waterproofing. We can have an answer to that on our side. We have a sealing and waterproofing system that we offer. So on request, we can seal off with a PVC foil, but we are also in preparation for liquid plastics, for example, Camperol or Triflex. Furthermore, with a certain or via a certain interface, you can see that here on the outer corner. Here we have integrated an element where we can hang in additional profiles in the scroll nose. So for example, if you had to bridge a certain door rail or our own frame. So we have great potential for innovation. We have a certain competitive edge in terms of legal obligations and liabilities, maintenance and comfort in terms of safety. As I said, we've been on the market for quite some time with the product. So we really developed the product so that it can be used in any situation, circumstances. Thank you very much.